Welcome to Dialogue, a true crime conversation. I'm your host, Rebecca Sebastian. Happy almost New Year. The release date of this episode is December 30th, and that means we are in the home stretch, my friends. And look, I know that when the calendar page turns and it's January 1, 2021, that not a lot is going to be different. But I think there's just a collective relief that the physical year of 2020 will be over and we can at least pretend or hope and imagine a different year. I know I've said in past episodes I'm optimistic of what the year holds, and I still am. But I'm also, tempered by the reality of the virus and the pandemic, which are still very much raging. So, I'm holding my plans loosely. I am hoping for the best, kind of expecting the worst, but nonetheless excited that 2020 is almost over. And I do truly wish you all a happy and healthy new year. Also thrilled to present today's episode, which is with a colleague of mine, if you will, from the Crawl Space Network. He is a podcaster. His name is Chris Duett. You might know his show, Criminal Perspective. And if you don't, I highly recommend you listen to it. And I highly recommend you listen to today's conversation because Chris holds nothing back. Nothing was off limits. And I really invited him on because I wanted to talk about mental health with him because he's so open about it on social media. And of course, I get the backstory on his show, what's coming up for Criminal Perspective in 2021, which sounds absolutely insane and interesting and compelling. So you're going to hear it all in this interview, and just what a warm and genuine guy Chris is. And I love his approach to his work. So couldn't be more excited to introduce him to you and to share his work. Also, stay tuned to the very end too, because I think you will hear such genuine terror in my response to his question of what is keeping you up at night. Maybe the most scared I've been on the podcast to date. Okay, with that, enjoy this conversation. We totally killed the small talk. Thank you, Chris, for being willing to do so. Chris Duett. All right. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being on Dialogue, a true crime conversation today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. There's nothing I'd rather be doing right now.
Oh, that's very, very kind. And I'm really glad we're doing it. There's a few reasons I've wanted to have you on. There's the obvious, you're a wonderful true crime podcaster, and I always want to have a great podcaster on. You're welcome. But I have to say I was compelled because it's been a year, right? I think for you, for me, and for everybody. And you're really vocal about mental health, and you're very vulnerable and candid about your own mental health struggles. So I thought it could be kind of interesting to talk to each other, kind of co-interview, since you are an interviewer on your show.
That's mighty gracious of you to call me that. I don't know if I call myself one.
I would.
Amateur interviewer?
Well, takes one to know one, I guess, because that's what I do. But yeah, you're a question asker, and you're curious, and you're a thoughtful conversationalist. So
question asker is good. I like that. That's a great title for me.
Question asker.
Yeah, curious person.
Curious person. I always say, follow your curiosity. I think that's all it takes to be a good interviewer, is to be curious and to listen.
Yeah, I agree.
I watch and listen to a lot of interviews where I'm like, do they really want to know that? Are they even listening? I'm not sure. So I think that will take you very far. Yeah. So I thought we could have a mental health conversation as two people who struggle and, work to stay level and healthy. But also, before we get to that, I do kind of want to introduce you to my audience in case they don't know about your show and your work.
That would be great.
So yeah, let's not forget that. So you were also on the Crawl Space Network with me, which is exciting. So maybe you could just share about Criminal Perspective and how it all came to be.
So I host a podcast called Criminal Perspective, and I've been doing it for about, I guess it's coming up on 2 years now, but I got started to give the short, long version, that's an oxymoron, but I'm going to make it happen. So about in 2009, I started corresponding with serial murderers and things like that. I had read enough true crime books and moved on to the textbooks. I had devoured absolutely everything, taken every morsel of information I can take, and it just still wasn't enough. So I started talking to them directly. And that went on for, 11 years now. And basically, my podcast is just that. I interview convicted murderers. Some are in prison, some are not. and that's the main focus. Over the last 11 years, I've talked to well over 100, and um, have definitely done my research, and I like to think I somewhat know what I'm doing. And um, yeah, I talk to them. I talk to survivors of violent crimes. I talk to experts in fields related to crime and criminals, and I just have a pretty much 360 podcast for anybody who's intrigued or pulled in by the violent criminal mind.
Okay, so is that your motivating factor to say I've read everything, I've consumed all there is about true crime with the exception of hearing from the source itself? Did you just want to hear it in their own words?
It's not so much that I wanted to hear it from them, it's that I wanted to cover everything and dive into every little detail. When you're subject to reading books and things like that, you can only get what they're giving you. You can't extract anything else from it. So I wanted to go directly to them and extract the information myself, and maybe ask questions that aren't answered in the books, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so you brought up survivors and victims of violent crime who you also speak to on your podcast. And that's, I think, what I appreciate maybe most about your show is that it exists and can hold space for both of those things, which I see more happening in the true crime genre more and more. So, but is there a difficulty in relating to both, or not relating to, but giving airtime to both? Do people have a problem and say, like, we don't need to hear from these monsters, quote unquote?
Absolutely, yeah.
So what do you say to that?
You can't please everybody. Don't try. These are the things that interest and intrigue me. I have a very healthy interest in this stuff. And yeah, I try to do it with the absolute best intentions, and even still, some people are just not going to like it, and that's okay. Don't listen to
Right.
it. That's it. Simple as that. If it's for you, if you can, this is what I do. And I would do this if people, I have been doing this for several years when nobody knew about it or listened to it. So, I mean, if you don't like it, that's totally fine. Fantastic. Don't listen to it. If you do, great. I think we'd get along wonderfully.
Right. Welcome to the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess some people, like to, again, it's like this black and white thing. It's like you're a victim's advocate or you're too sympathetic to perpetrators, and that there's no middle or something.
Yeah. I think with me, it's more of obtaining an understanding, and it's not so much of interjecting my sympathy and emotions and things like that. More so than there's information, there's value, there's things to be learned, there's things to be gained. There's Dr. Lee Meller referred to me as somebody who collects data, which I found very interesting. I never thought of myself like somebody who has a collection of data from what I do, but I suppose I do.
That's
and
so
and really,
interesting.
yeah, and really that's where I am on that. Of course, I am human, and some of the stories do affect me, but at the end of the day, that's not why I do it. Why I do it is for the knowledge and the information that comes from all of it. I mean, survivors, victims, murderers, they're all synonymous with each other. They all coexist together. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. So to get a full picture of it, I think is extremely valuable. And I don't see anybody doing it. So I felt that, hey, why not be the person to do this? So I did it.
Yeah. And you've probably got this incredible body of work and data now. Are people wanting access to? I mean, they can have it through the podcast, but maybe in a more, what's the word?
Academic realm?
Yeah. I'm using my hands, like curated into some like academic form, like some tangible piece of information that they could use, or
academically, no. I do, due to the show, I have gotten a lot of relationships with a lot of people in the academic field and things like that, and they know of all the information I have. More so, they're interested in me and asking me things and working with me instead of saying, hey, can I have this interview? But I do get hit up quite a bit by other media wanting to license it for TV shows and true crime stuff. They, because these interviews are only available on my show. So, yeah, those people absolutely want to use my material. But in the academic field and for people who are more interested in studying things like that. No, they don't really want the access to the interviews. It's more so they want to talk to me about my experiences and maybe helping them directly. That happens a lot. Yeah, no, it's the entertainment side loves the interviews. The academic world loves me. So,
right. I mean, that's not a bad place to be. So who stands out? I mean, you've done hundreds, if not more, interviews at this point. Like, who stands out? Who was the most difficult? Who was the most surprising? Like, give us a little bit of juice.
Let me give you the skinny on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the ones that are most memorable for me that kind of stand out in my head, there's a couple for different reasons. My very first letter I received was from the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, and
what a way to get started. Sorry.
Yeah,
but...
I know, right?
Jeez.
So I get the letter and I take a look at it, and I can't read who it's from, but I see it's from San Quentin State Prison. So I figured, okay, this is somebody likely on death row. And I open it up and then I look at it. I read the letter, and then the content of the letter is really what gave it away. And then it was signed Richard at the bottom. And I looked again at the envelope, his signature on the envelope, and I was like, holy shit, that says Richard Ramirez. That's the fucking Night Stalker. He knows who I am. You know, you get the pit in your stomach, and because there's no turning back at that point. Now you're in. And I was hooked. That's what got me hooked. I was hooked.
What year was this about?
This was in 2009.
Okay.
Early 2009. Yeah. So that one stood out to me for that reason. There's a couple of interviews that I did that I think were just, they stand out to me for, it's hard to explain, but one was a guy named Scott Eby who broke into a home and abducted a 3-year-old girl named Riley Fox, and he ended up taking her to a campsite, molesting her and drowning her.
Oh my God.
He is sitting there on the phone with him as he's describing this in detail to me. I mean, it still bothers me. I won't listen to it. And I've heard everything. And so that one stands out to me it was just so disturbing. I had another one with some mass murderers, one in particular named Brandon Roberts. He was involved in a mass murder that occurred in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm not sure the year, maybe 2013 or something like that. Him and a couple co-defendants, they murdered, I think it was 3 or 4 people at a homeless encampment. And when I was on the phone with him, we were talking about all of this, and he was remorseless, cold, said he would keep killing if he could, had fantasies of torturing people. I believe one of the victims was raped. He was, he loved all of it, bragged about it basically. But on the phone with him, and I had previously talked to one of his co-defendants, his friend at the time who was there, who helped in all this, and she never mentioned this to me. But while on the phone with Brandon, he told me that I think it was a few weeks prior to that, they had murdered another person.
Oh my
and
gosh.
She was scared to death that they were going to file charges and she was going to go to death row. And that's why she didn't tell me. But I found out from Brandon that they had, I think they had beaten and strangled another man and put his body in the river. And I think he said the DA came to him and he accepted responsibility. There was never any charges, but I found out in that conversation that they had committed another murder weeks prior, which nobody really knew about. And that was pretty shocking.
So what do you do? What is your responsibility in that situation?
The DA was already aware. He had already signed something taking responsibility, saying, yeah, I am responsible for this murder. And they pretty much just closed the case. So the authorities knew about it. And they had suspected him. They just didn't have anything to charge him. So they just went to him and said, look, we'll just put this away. We just want to close this case. And he was like, yeah, this is what happened. And he sat there on my podcast and told me what happened in that murder. And yeah, I was pretty shocked.
So I think about this a lot when I'm talking to people on my show, and we talk about sort of like everyday criminals. And I think why I've become a bit passionate about criminal justice reform is because our country is it's full of people that I think like could be me or you, like one bad decision away from being on the other side with some other environmental factors and like how they were raised and all of that. And then we always sort of make this little caveat, like, and then of course there's like the serial killers and the monsters and the depraved people with cold blood killing in their blood. But like, I don't even think about those people when I think about true crime, but you're kind of, that's what you do. Like that is your primary source. So that can get to you, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta take breaks from it. I mean, if you live in a junkyard, you're going to get sick. You got to leave the junkyard to be okay. So you cannot be surrounded by that stuff all day, every day. And it's, I look at the worst of the worst, and that's who I deal with. And that's what intrigues me. And, but yeah, when I'm not working, on my show, I don't really watch true crime stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you consume? Like what's your input like for other, is it music? Is it a different genre entirely of TV? Like what do you like?
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, this is going to sound so nerdy, but what I watch is stuff that I watched growing up. I watch reruns of everything. I don't really watch anything new. So I watch like a lot of Saved by the Bell and Full House.
Oh my God. I love that. And I only wish people could see you and like,
I know.
Get the extra visual on that. And that kind of leads me to something that I don't know how to broach this, but I'm going to just try. So bear with me and know that it's coming from like a really good and sincere place. But do you think the way you visually present two things? A, is it annoying to like constantly hear things like what I just said? Like it's surprising because you're like a very tattooed person, including on the face and neck, right? So that's like a strong physical, like visual statement. So is it annoying to then always hear things like what I just said, like, oh, I watch Full House, and you're like, that's so like, it's like refreshing or something. Second part, do you think that helps you in your interviews? Not that they're seeing you, but like, I don't know if it's like a strong, do you have just a strong sense of self? But is there some weird like street cred you get with like working with some of these people? And okay, I'll stop there because that's two.
So I mean, people will always have preconceived notions. If I'm being 100% honest, I don't care what anybody perceives me as or thinks of me or anything like that. I don't care. And that's for people, my friend, that's for anybody. I just don't care. I do what I do, and that's the only way I'm comfortable in life. People they're going to think what they want and this and that and whatever.
Has that always been true for you since you were young, or did you kind of grow into that?
No, I mean, I've always been a strange person, just very, just very unconventional tastes and, just not, I never felt like I fit in with anybody. I really didn't. And, I have found, I have friends and everything and people that I get along with and stuff, but yeah, my whole life I felt like an outcast. So it's not like I grew up and got my face tattooed and then I all of a sudden feel like I don't fit in with society. No, this has been, an ongoing thing forever. So it just, I don't know. I've always been like that. And it doesn't, none of that stuff bothers me. And no, I don't think the inmates, I don't think they care, honestly. I think what really helps me out in that regard is I'm very laid back. I'm very genuine. I'm very candid. I'm very upfront. And people know what they're getting with me. And I think that makes people comfortable.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, it took me several years to figure out how to do this properly and do it well. You really have to know what you're getting into. And for me, I kind of learned as I went, but I definitely learned, and you learn the do's and don'ts. And
can you point to anything that you adjusted along the way that you're like, oh, I used to do this, but I know doesn't work. Is there anything sort of specific?
Yeah, I think when I first started, I was so eager to ask them questions and dig into them and all that. And I did it without establishing any sort of trust or rapport or giving them anything from myself. And that eagerness hurt me because, you make them feel like a guinea pig or something like that, and they're not going to respond to you. You have to even if you do want something like that, it has to come from a genuine place, and you do have to acknowledge them.
Mm,
And I think a lot of people just kind of skip that and be like, hey, blah, 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 and start asking all these questions. And it makes them feel uncomfortable. They don't know you. They don't trust. All of them have major trust issues just by the environment of
sure.
prison. So yeah, there's definitely do's and don'ts and rights and wrongs. And, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, you will have less success.
Yeah.
Like, I can promise
Yeah.
that.
Well, I guess like anything, the more you do something too, you get better and more
Hmm.
comfortable, as it should be, right? Like,
Yes.
I hope
Yeah.
that today's interview is better than my first one. Like, if it isn't, I might want to.
It's
No,
my fault if it's not.
absolutely not. You tweeted recently that you concluded an interview that made you feel really humbled and proud, I would guess,
Yeah.
because you felt the people you interviewed, the people felt that they were better represented in your interview than in one in a major news outlet that we can or cannot name. Can you, when is that episode coming out, and can you spill who that is, or not yet?
Yeah. I'll give the whole scoop on your
yay.
show. So next month I'll be putting out an episode, and next month will be January. January of 2021, I'll have an episode coming out about a girl named Alexandria Eisen, and she went by the nickname Tomorrow. And basically, Alex Eisen was a 17-year-old heroin addict living on the streets of Portland, Oregon, and she was selling her body to support her habit. In 1999, she was the third known victim of a serial killer named Todd Allen
Ooh.
Reed, and she was such a young, pretty girl. Everybody said she was so full of life. She was so full of happiness and just the biggest heart. And I thought it was so tragic. And she represented all these women who were, you know, you'll hear, oh yeah, Todd Allen Reed murdered 3 prostitutes. They're not prostitutes. They're women who had to, you know, whatever their circumstances is, that's not what they are. So I got a hold of Alex Eisen's mother and best friend, and I talked to them at length, and they were nice enough to tell me all about her life and the situation regarding her death. Apparently, after she died, not long after she died in 1999, a major media publication did an article on her, and both her mother and her best friend hated it and said that, you know, it was terrible. She was mischaracterized and misrepresented. They felt that their words were taken out of context and everything. So I did this episode, and I really put out Alex Eisen's life as a person, and not a heroin addicted prostitute. And both her mother and best friend told me that it was the story that she deserved. And yeah, it's amazing. It's such an amazing feeling.
Yeah.
You know, it's incredibly humbling.
It is. It's like why I would imagine one of the reasons you do what you do. And then when you,
Absolutely.
sometimes you know it inside, and then, but when you get to hear it out loud, it's pretty thrilling and humbling. And I think that's one of the most important things happening right now is creating a more three-dimensional view of a victim or a survivor, and not reducing them to these quick sound bites in stories. You know, we see that with the Long Island serial killer. They were sex workers, and, you know, that infects investigations because of how much we do or don't care. Mm-hmm. So I love that you're doing that. This next question I just thought of while you were talking. Do you think we can apply the same point of view to the perpetrators? Is it fair and okay to not reduce them to the worst thing that they've ever done?
That's such an interesting question. I've never gotten that question. I love that. So this is my take, and I'm going to try and answer this in a kind of roundabout bullshitty way. But so when I talk to somebody who does really, really horrible stuff, for instance, I was very, I liked Whitey Bulger a lot, and he was a notorious gangster, went down on federal charges. I think something like 18 or 19 murders, and just not a good person, but I got along with him so well because our personalities just, you know, we worked. He had photos of my family in his photo album with his family. And yeah, and that's crazy. And when he died, I had so much mixed emotions. For people who don't know, he was sent to federal prison. He has long been suspected of ratting out other criminals so that the authorities would leave him alone. And that's how he was able to function and get so high on the streets and in the Irish mob and everything. And when he went to federal prison, he was transferred. The first day, I think he got to a West Virginia prison. He was beaten to death on the yard. And it's so strange because I felt so conflicted, because I was like, this is Jim that used to tell me stories about when he was in Alcatraz and stuff. And we used to exchange all these great letters, and we got along, and, and we were different. I'm a Howard Stern guy. He was a Don Imus guy, and we would argue about, but, and then at the same time, I think that, man, this is Whitey Bulger, a notorious horrible person. He was the number 2 person on the FBI most wanted list behind Osama bin Laden until bin Laden died. Then he became number 1. So
that's insane.
I was very conflicted when he died. I was it's such a strange thing, because you're glad for all the people that he hurt, but then you think, well, he wasn't all bad. There was a part to him that was affable, and that was genuine. He wasn't manipulating me, or believe me, I can tell when it's not genuine and everything. And it gave me such a strange confliction. But also I talked to serial killers who had terrible fucking childhoods and upbringings, and very traumatic things happened to them, and I feel bad for them. It's okay to feel bad for a person when something bad happens to them. Mm-hmm. And who are we? We didn't know that they were going to grow up to in turn do these horrible things. And so yeah, it runs the gamut. Some of them I feel bad for at times. Some of their actions, I don't feel bad for them. I feel bad for the people that they've hurt. And it's a full spectrum of emotion. And, it's very heavy and a hard thing to carry, having your emotions on such a high acceleration and going through so many, cycles. But that's an occupational hazard, I suppose I can say.
Yep, I agree. And you said it's hard. And I think that's the difference between demonizing or sanctifying someone, if you will. Like, that's easier. I think that's like that extreme, like, polar thinking of like someone's all good or all bad, and that just makes us feel better. Like,
I think people want to generalize it and want to, I don't know, they don't want the complexities of it.
Exactly.
But believe me, they are there. Just because you're not acknowledging them, there are complexities to these people. It's not general. It's not so general as in, this person is all bad, throw them away. I don't know. And that's just how I am. I'm maybe it's my OCD or something, but I want to know those complexities, those details, to dig in. And yeah, it definitely, you feel it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I've never thought about it being connected to OCD. I think I don't know why I'm more comfortable in the messy middle of things than a lot of people I know, but I am, and I really don't know what that's about. But I'm really, especially as I get older and mature and hopefully grow emotionally, I'm just like more comfortable sort of holding that uncomfortable tension between right, wrong, black, white, what I know and what I don't know. I just know there's a big space.
I think for me, it's that FOMO applied to this. And it's so funny because it's none of my fucking business. None of it is any of my business. For me to be talking to murderers or people who have survived the most traumatic, horrible, tragic events you can imagine, I don't know how I found myself in the role that I'm in, because honestly, it has nothing to do with me, but here I am seeking it out, and that's such a strange thing when you think about it.
It is. And I've never thought about it till you said it, but I don't know. I am technically, no, not your business, not mine, not any of ours. But if someone wants to share, maybe they view it as an invitation. And I know that like the power of sharing your story, good, bad, or ugly, is real. I don't think anyone can argue that. Like Brene Brown is a social researcher and she's got all the proof on that. So I don't know, not your business, but maybe your calling or your gift, and you're doing it. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm so interested in all this. Don't know about you, but I am in a fashion rut. That's why I am so glad this episode is presented by CURATEUR. CURATEUR is an all-encompassing, curated lifestyle membership for the modern woman. With style expert Rachel Zoe at the helm, CURATEUR delivers member value via the curated lens of confidence, convenience, and community. CURATEUR delivers coveted name brand fashion, beauty, and home essentials right to your door every season. Each seasonal box of style includes 5 pieces to elevate your style. The new winter curation features products from trailblazing female founders and designers to help you feel a bit more chic and confident this holiday season. Become a year-round member to get the winter curation and unlock access to the members-only shop and receive exclusive member benefits. Rachel Zoe's CURATEUR is exclusively offering my listeners $30 off by using the code PODGO30 at curateur.com. That's code PODGO30, PODGO30 for $30 off at curateur.com. That's CURATEUR.com. It's more than just a box. It's your trusted partner in living a life well curated.
Hey, this is Chris from the Criminal Perspective Podcast. If you're enjoying the podcast you're currently listening to on the Crossbase Media Network, consider checking out Criminal Perspective. On Criminal Perspective, I take 11 years of my experience corresponding with notorious murderers and I bring it directly to you. At times, I'll give you interviews directly with the most heinous murderers imaginable, like Nico Clos, the Vampire of Paris. I read that you found some cookies in his kitchen and you just sat there eating cookies, watching him squirm around and die.
Yeah, it wasn't actual cookies. I think it was bread, just bread. But yeah, I ate something. I just sat down on the corner and watched him die, basically.
Other times, I'll bring you survivors of violent crime telling their harrowing tales themselves, like Shasta McClain, who survived being abducted by serial killer Joseph Duncan.
After being at that campsite for like a week or two, he had asked me how I wanted to die. He said because I had to choose one or the other. It could either be quick or it could be the slow process. So he gave me the option of being strangled to death, or he gave me the option of being shot.
So please check out Criminal Perspective on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are heard. Criminal Perspective is a Crossbase Media podcast.
Okay, so let's go to the mental health thing since you brought up OCD.
Sure.
If you don't mind, because
it seems
like you're an open book about it.
Yeah, totally.
So that's what's intriguing to me is that I share selectively about my mental health struggles, and you, from where I sit, seem to share.
I'm all in.
Yeah, liberally, I guess is the word. And now it makes more sense as I've gotten to know you just in this few minutes that you don't care what people think about you, and that. God, that is so liberating, and I wish I had more of that, but I don't, and I care so deeply what people think, and I'm so afraid of their perception changing, and even my own possible subconscious manipulation of it. Like, well, maybe if I am struggling, I will gain something from that, or there's certain audiences I wouldn't want to know there's any struggle, and I want to appear, like I've got it together. So Is it just motivated by you don't care, or is there something deeper behind it that you feel like it's important to share about it?
I think that my ability to do it is motivated by I don't give a shit. But I think that why I do it is, there's a more important meaning there. I think a lot of people struggle the same way that I struggle. And I think that, I know, because several people have reached out and told me that they feel comfort seeing somebody else exposing themselves, and they feel less alone, and they feel less like it's only them and there's something wrong with them. And it kind of eliminates a bit of a stigma and makes it a bit more acceptable to present and to say, hey, this is me. I can't pretend like I'm a perfect person. Just throw that onto the pile, So I just say, hey, this is me. This is what I deal with. This is what I struggle with. I try to manage it. I'm not always successful. I have good days and bad days. But yeah, I put that out there, and people, just that alone, people find comfort. And then from then on, you have people saying, hey, I feel like this too. How should I address this? And, you're starting to help people directly because of it. So yeah, I think that's important.
Okay, so if you wouldn't mind, can you talk about what some of your struggles are, specifically diagnoses, and are they
Yeah.
official, medical,
Yep.
self-diagnoses, all of it?
Yeah, sure. So I, I've always had high functioning anxiety, my whole life, just chewing the shit out of my nails until they bleed. And, um, yeah, all sorts of, funky stuff like that. But I can harness it into production and put it towards stuff. And for most of my life, that's how I was. And I was able to use that to create. And, I got older and, I had some traumatic head injuries. I don't know if that'll plays a role or not. In 2005, I was nearly murdered. I was walking down the street at night in Jacksonville, Florida, and three guys yelled something at me from their car, and I just ignored it and kept walking. And then I saw them turn into an apartment complex coming up, and I saw three guys walk out to the road. And I've been a lifelong martial artist. I've practiced martial arts since I think was like 7 years old, and I was an amateur kickboxer at one point. I know how to take care of myself. So I kept walking, which was stupid. I should have crossed the
As
street.
opposed to what? Okay.
Yeah, I honestly, it was a pride thing. I should have crossed the street or turned the other way or did something. I didn't have a cell phone. This was 2005. And I just kept walking. One of the guys had his hands behind his back, and the biggest one was furthest away. And then I walked up and I'm thinking, oh, they just want me to fight their big dumb friend or something. And when I walked past that first guy, he pulled a bat from behind his back and just started wailing on me with it. And I got the back of my head smashed. I had 5 staples in the back. They broke my hand, my wrist right there. And I woke up in a pool of blood, like I was swimming in blood.
They left you like that?
Yeah, they were gone. I had no idea how long I was unconscious for. They were gone. And some random guy stopped on the side of the road, and he put me in his truck, and I went to the hospital. Funny enough, I went to the emergency room, and I didn't realize my hand was broken. They tried to make me fill out paperwork, and I couldn't move my hand or anything. And I'm covered in blood. I took my shirt off to put on the back of my head to clot the blood. And they're like, yeah, just have a seat. And so I'm sitting in the ER, and like 2 minutes later, I start going out. And they're like, all right, we got to get him back there now. It turns out I was dying. I was minutes away from dying. And so they get me back there, CAT scan, staples, all the fun stuff, cast, head wound bandage and everything. And then they shoved me out the door, and I'm still alive, but that definitely affects me a lot. And a few years ago, my anxiety and depression became unmanageable. At the time, I didn't really know what was going on. I was having horrible panic attacks, and I would lay in bed for days, and it was terrible. And I was very close to killing myself. And instead of doing that, I went to a doctor, and I went through a long period of getting my medication correct. I was diagnosed with panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, severe depression, and I also have insomnia, chronic insomnia, probably PTSD from being nearly beaten to death. And horrible stuff. So I got on medication, and then it's been a struggle to manage it. And there's a good period where I went off my medication. I would have psychotic episodes. My panic attacks were so bad I would dissociate and go into psychosis.
Because of the medication, or when
you
got off?
When I was off of my medication.
Yeah.
So I got back on I was doing so well, I was like, oh, I'm so good. I don't need this anymore.
That's the danger. I know.
Yeah. And then when I got off of it, it was just, nope.
Yeah.
So, back on medication. I meditate 5 times a day. I do yoga every day. Changed my diet. I exercise, aromatherapy, lavender oil, grounding techniques, everything. I put so much effort. This has disrupted my life so much. And even still, just managing it so that I can function through the day takes hours out of my day. So
oh my gosh,
it's a struggle to live with. It's not something I can hide. I think that's another reason is that I'm so open about it, is because this is not something that I can I'm just going to pretend like I'm fine. I can't do that. That's not an option for me. So I just have to put it out there and just let people know, hey, this is what's going on. And usually all my friends and everybody are incredibly accommodating. And they understand if I got to leave or, you know, whatever the case, like people get it, you know, and I think if I was hiding that, maybe people wouldn't understand and they'd be like, what's his fucking problem? You know? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, Chris, that is so much. Are you in talk therapy as well?
Funny enough, one of my sponsors is a therapy service. So, yeah, I do regular therapy and,
Good.
yeah, and therapy is great. And even if you're not into a therapist, peer therapy is fantastic. Just talk to somebody, anybody.
Right.
Just don't keep it to yourself. I think when I would get really bad is when I would try and isolate and keep it a secret and try to deal with it on my own. And that never, ever, ever worked, ever. So yeah, therapy is great.
Yeah, I relate to the isolation. It never helps.
Yeah.
And sometimes I can rationalize it and say, like, it's better for everybody if I just remove myself and, you know, I'll come out of this okay. And it doesn't work that way.
That's a big part of it is I don't want to burden anybody, you know, and that's huge.
Yeah.
And believe me, every single person who deals with a mental illness, that is on their mind. They don't want to be a burden, and they understand that there's a difference. I don't know how to say, but that they're not. There's so many people that I see, and I was just like, I just think, man, I wish I was like that. I wish I could just, you know, go out in public and be normal and talk and, you know, just be so carefree. I'm not. I'm crippled with fear, and yeah, everybody thinks they're being a burden because people have to deal with them because of these special circumstances of their mental health. And yeah, that's a big, like, you can't do that. You can't think like that.
Yeah. So you're a spouse and a parent, which I think is like maybe the hardest space sometimes. And that's my experience. The people that have to live with you,
Yeah.
It's almost the hardest. So how does that look, your family life, and what's the awareness of probably your wife knows, but your kids in terms of your struggles?
Yeah. So my 3-year-old doesn't really know because there's
Baby.
yeah, oh yeah. We just want to, you know, play Nerf guns and stuff.
Yep.
My 10-year-old son, he knows very well what goes on with me. We explain to him, hey, daddy gets sad sometimes for no reason, and or I'll get scared about you know, things for no reason, or things that just aren't going to happen or whatever. And he jokes about it with me and stuff. And you know, I think the other day I said something like that, I know your weakness, I'll twist your arm or something. He was like, I know your weakness, I'll make you afraid of something. So we joke about it. He knows I'm a heavy cannabis user. He knows that that's daddy's medicine.
Yeah.
He knows what it is. He knows why I use it.
Yeah.
I have a license for it. I've explained everything to him. I've explained the legality and how I'm using it is legal. And he's very well aware. My wife is amazing. She also has mental health issues that she deals with. She's as well as on medication and things, and she's incredibly understanding, and I couldn't ask for a better wife.
That's so encouraging to hear. And I think of, you know, I think it's generational. I don't know, I'm probably older, but we're around the same age.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But, you know, I think so many of us grew up with so much shame around mental health. A lot of our parents probably struggled, did not tell us, would never bring us into that. And that, yes, there's a protection that you need to keep from your kids, but there is also a truth and an honesty, because it's very likely something they're going to deal with if you are.
Yeah.
So the fact that your older son and soon probably your younger one will come into their own knowing that this could be part of the reality, they're not going to be blindsided by it. I think that's a real gift, actually. And if they don't struggle, which hopefully they don't, they're going to have someone in their life who does.
Right.
I don't see any downside to being out about this. It's so hard. And yet it's so hard, you know, and that's what I constantly wrestle with.
Yeah, I think it's just a person's how other people perceive them and impression management, basically. And, putting forth, oh, this is the presentation of who I am. And, and for me, and I know that not everybody can be, or can be how I am or wants to be how I am. I get that. I totally get that. But for me, like I said, there's no other way.
This is the only way.
This is the only way that I can live, is to be myself and say, this is who I am. Just put myself out and just be like, if you're cool with it, cool. If you're not, then that's cool too. I'm just living. That's all.
Yeah, no, I think it's so wonderful to see. And it is an invitation and an encouragement to people like me who wonder if they could be a little more open and would it be okay?
Yeah.
Has it ever impacted your workflow? Like, do you put out a weekly podcast?
I do. And, yeah, absolutely. Of course it has. It's definitely, with me, you may not get a podcast every week. It's hard for me to book advertisers really far in advance because I'm not sure if I'll, be in the right mental state to get a show out and everything. So yeah, it definitely affects my work, and this is what I do. So, but there is no job on the planet that I can do that wouldn't be affected by this. So you just have to accept it. You have to say, okay, this is what's going to happen here, and then understand it and roll with it. And that's it.
Yeah. Do you usually feel better after an interview, or worse, or drained or energized? Like, what's the right after the mic goes out? Like, what do you feel?
Yeah. That's another really, really good question. So anytime I have to do an interview or I'm in front of people or interacting with somebody, I get elevated anxiety. My anxiety gets up a little. It's not, it's not terrible or anything, but I'll sweat, I'll pace, I'll be uncomfortable for the day. It's not, ruining my life. I can still go about business, but I just, it's there. You feel it a little bit, it's a little higher. And so whenever I get done with what I'm doing, really it depends how the interview goes. I'm 100% invested in every single interview. I'm present in there in mind, body, and whatever. I'm there, I'm in. And when you're like that, depending on your personalities, different ones will affect you differently for different reasons. And there's some I walk away from with a myriad of emotions that, I'll feel bad. I feel the sense of tragedy that revolves around this event that they're telling me about. And sometimes I feel inspired when I talk to a survivor who has a really just really a remarkable story. It is inspiring. You can feel it, and it really depends. It really depends. And different people are different, and they're going to respond differently to different things. And for me, it's, certain things hit certain parts of my personality, and I don't know. I never walk away from it drained or anything. But I definitely do come away from an interview feeling like I've just ran a mental marathon in terms of, man, I just took in a lot, So usually when I'm done, it's, back to normal life, and I don't think about it, and I don't know.
Can you do 2 in a day?
No.
Yeah, me either. No. I learned that the hard way, though.
I can hardly do 2 in a week if I'm being honest. So.
Yeah. No, I know. I think. Do you think you're an empath, or would you say? I know it's a weird, like, self-gauging thing, but just curious.
I think I'm a very empathetic person, but I don't think I've always been that way. I think there's a good portion of my life where I was much less empathetic and much more self-centered, and I think I've grown a lot in that regard to becoming somebody who I think I'm a very empathetic person and a very giving person now. I like how I've changed in that regard. So I mean, yeah, I'm empathetic. I haven't always been that way. I wouldn't say that I'm a natural empath, or but yeah,
I know it is kind of a weird thing to say.
Yeah,
but the feelings you're describing after the interview make me wonder if you are, because you're really like embodying them. If you're so engaged in something, you're there, mind, body, and spirit. You're probably absorbing a lot. But I have like this pattern for interviews where I like the dread before an interview. People I am desperate to talk to.
Yeah.
You know, begged to come on.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's more like imposter syndrome, but it's like,
Absolutely.
why am I doing this?
Yes.
Who do I think I am? Like what you were saying earlier, I have no business talking to this person. I hope they cancel. Maybe they're sick. You know, I go through this terrible, and like my stomach is literally in knots. And it could also be with someone I'm very comfortable with. And no, it'll be like a toned down version, but it's always just like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. Why am I doing this? I'm going to stop. And then we start and I'm there and I end it and I'm always so glad I did it. Always very glad they're not sick.
I'm always glad it's over. I don't know.
So glad it's over. So glad it's over. The relief is huge.
Yeah.
But I do get a little catatonic. You know, I can't talk to people right after. I can't move quickly into my next thing. I have to like have a little space, and I think that's my high introversion. But especially if we Zoom and I'm like active listening face for an hour. It's always sincere because I am super duper listening, but that's kind of that's my roller coaster ride for interviews. Yeah. Who are you dying to talk to for 2021?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I mean, we'll see who wants to talk to me. I can tell you that right now, I'm going to have 2 cases that are not really what I usually do coming up, probably in January or February, but I have a woman named DIE-ALOGUE who a lot of people are familiar with. She was on a show called Beyond Scared Straight back in the day, and those shows. Yeah, she basically became a meme because of how fucking terrifying she looks. She looks scary, and she's doing 40 to life for, I think, stolen property and drugs, and she's probably a 3-striker. I haven't spoken to her too much, but I have talked to her a bit, and I am going to have her on the show because she, you know, she was a very captivating person, and we didn't really learn too much about her. So I kind of want to get her story, and so I'll have her on. And there's another guy I'm talking to who has a very, very interesting case. He is a murderer. It's undisputed. He broke into his father's home, and this is not his biological father, broke into his home with a gun because his father was going to pay him to falsely testify in a custody hearing so that he could keep custody of his 2 daughters. And Chris, the guy I was talking to, those were his siblings, and Chris's father was going to pay Chris to testify so that his father could keep custody. Chris wanted the money. Chris was 18 at the time. So he broke into his father's house. He had a gun, a rifle, and he had 1 shell in his pocket that he wasn't even going to take. His friend that dropped him off was like, here, take this just in case. So he put it in his pocket. He goes into the house and he goes to his dad's room. And I guess he just wanted to use the gun to scare him. And he sees his dad molesting his 6-year-old sister. So him and his dad are in the living room. He says he doesn't really remember loading the gun, but he shot his dad right in the head, point blank, and killed him. So Chris was arrested and charged with murder with the aggravating circumstance of robbery and faced the death penalty. I believe it was his grandmother wanted him to get the death penalty. His siblings weren't allowed to testify. It never came out in court about the molestation allegations. Chris himself was horribly abused by his dad.
Why wasn't that admissible? Why?
I don't know. Because the girls were so young, they needed their parental permission to testify, and they couldn't get it. It
was family, so yeah.
So Chris was convicted and sentenced to life. He did not get the death penalty, but he was abused by his father sexually and physically. And I thought it was interesting. I spoke to him a lot, and then after talking to him, I 100% believe him. I spoke to his sister, who at the time was the 6-year-old who was being abused, and she corroborated everything and told me, yeah, that's what happened. And yeah, just an amazing story. And so
it's heartbreaking.
So right now it's a matter of getting Chris's story out there and then seeing what can be done, because it wasn't a murder during a robbery. It was him protecting his siblings. So.
I can imagine how complicated that is legally, though, because he came with a gun just in case. So it's not like it came out of nowhere, even though it turned into like a, not self-defense, but a protection of this minor. The situation changed, but surely there does feel like legally maybe some kind of recourse.
I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, me either.
So I'm definitely not trying to dig into and analyze the legal aspect.
Yeah,
of it,
we're just the question askers.
Yeah. But I do feel like there's something not right about that, about his conviction. There's something not fair about it. That's how I feel.
What state is that?
This was in Virginia.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. How often are you talking to people with claims of innocence or asking for,
I've been doing it since
assistance?
Since the beginning. I think it was in 2000 or 2001, I got a CD, which was a compilation from Henry Rollins, and it was to benefit the West Memphis Three. So I bought this CD, and then I learned about their case. I think I was probably 16 or 17 at the time. Yep. And I was just like, me being a fucking weird kid from a small town in Central Florida in the South, I was like, holy fuck.
Relatable.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That could totally be me, like 100%. So I dug deep into their case, and I started raising funds for their defense and everything I could to just try and help, even if it was a little bit, because there's just something so wrong about it. In, I believe it was 2003 or 2004, same thing. I helped raise funds and stuff for Mumi Abu Jamal. I have a nice thank you letter from him here somewhere.
Wow.
And he currently, he was on death row at the time. He's now off death row, but still unfortunately in prison. And there's a lot of cases like that. And I am involved with them, and I do try and help these people. I do try and talk to these people. And that right now, as we talk, there are people on death row that I firmly believe are 100% innocent, and it's terrible.
I'm very passionate about this topic. Can I ask your stance on the death penalty, and has it changed? Did it change over the course of you doing interviews with inmates or formerly incarcerated? Yeah,
so I never really gave much thought to the death penalty. I think most people don't. I think back when I learned about the West Memphis 3 case, because Damian Eccles was sentenced to death, that's when I started to learn about the death penalty. And what I learned was that I don't like it. So I'm not a fan of the death penalty. I do want the death penalty abolished. I would never tell anybody who is directly or collaterally affected by a crime where someone is on death row that what they think is wrong, or they feel that having this person executed. I will never, ever, ever tell anybody that. I will keep my opinions to myself, and we can coexist that way.
What a good distinction.
Yeah. I mean, who am I to, tell somebody in a position who's experiencing it that what they're feeling is wrong? That's fucking ridiculous. So I would never, ever do that. But, if I'm to be asked or anything, I don't support the death penalty, and, I never really have.
Yeah. The more I learn, the more I think this is not working. And, there's so many reasons I think to be against it. And so I think it's a matter of, how you appeal to someone. It's like margin of error, not great. Like, so statistically, numbers wise, like who wants that on their record or on their shoulders and conscience? Secondly, when you have the wrong person in prison, the real person is still out there and no one's looking for them and very likely committing other crimes. So how about for that reason? Like, there's so many reasons. And for me, there's sort of the philosophical, Brian Stevenson there's a tweet going around from him. He started the Equal Justice Initiative, and the question isn't whether somebody deserves to be put to death. The question is, do we deserve to kill someone? And I think that kind of comes down to that if we believe in, sanctioning government killings.
This is what I think is so funny about the death penalty, is that in a geographical area, you take Illinois and Florida, 2 different states, you commit the same crime, you can be killed in one and not in the other.
Right.
So, and people are, it just doesn't make sense. It's like there's already places where this doesn't exist, and that's okay. But
Right.
it's such a weird thing. It's like people feel like they can't, like they have to have it for some reason, and it's not a necessity.
No, no. And America seems to have a very different approach from other, a lot of other countries in the more developed world. I don't know why we're lagging behind on that thought process. It's a little bit primitive, is what my last guest called it, which I thought was accurate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree. I think that it's an outdated practice, and it's not supported by any statistical data or anything to show that it's effective and stuff. It may give some people some peace of mind, but yeah, I think the practice is so incredibly flawed that it's people can learn to live with these things without killing somebody.
Yeah,
I don't know. It just, for me, it doesn't compute. It just doesn't. And that's not to say that somebody listening to me might think that they don't agree with me at all, and they're like, what's not to, it makes perfect sense to me. I don't know. I've looked into it quite a bit, and I've yet to be convinced that the death penalty is a good idea and worthy of funding and whatnot,
right. No, same. I'm with you. I'm so with you. And I think the peace of mind factor is such flawed thinking. Like, if that gives somebody peace of mind, like, that's terrifying to me.
What separates you from that person that you,
right.
And it's just,
right.
and it becomes, to me, it becomes this weird moral dance, and it's just all sorts of stupid, awkward, funky shit going on that people just don't want to address, and it goes back to the generalizations.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. It's
fixed thinking on one side or the other.
It's all very superficial most of the time. So
right. Okay, Chris, this has been fascinating. So happy to have you on Dialogue. But I do ask one question of all my guests before they go, and the question is, what keeps you up at night, or what is keeping you up at night currently? This is literal or figurative.
Chronic insomnia.
Oh God, it couldn't get more literal. How often is that true for you?
So I get about 3 hours of sleep a night, every night.
You're talking to an 8-hour a night girl.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Night. There's every like 2 weeks I'll get like a solid night of like 9-10 hours, and I think that's just my body just saying, hey, we gotta shut
survival.
It down.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the most part, I sleep for about 3 hours, and it sucks. I try to get as much as I can, and my body just won't do it.
Oh my gosh.
That's definitely what keeps me up at night. So
do you nap during the day?
I try to. Sometimes I'm able to squeak a nap out.
Yeah.
But sometimes I can't fall asleep or anything.
Yeah.
So, but
oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
That's fine. I'm always awake, and I'm always doing something. So
yeah.
I'm pretty sure my neighbors think I'm on meth or something.
He's pacing again at 3 in the morning. Oh my gosh. Well, Chris, this has just been illuminating and fascinating. I love getting to know you more. Thank you so much for being on, and I hope you guys have a happy holiday and good health in your house.
Thank you. Same to you, and thank you so much for inviting me, and it was a total privilege and honor to talk to you, and you're so much better at this than I am. So.
Oh my gosh. You surely you jest. You're too kind. I think I really like your style, because I think it's what I want my style to be like when I first started listening. So we're colleagues. Thanks for being on Dialogue. Dialogue is a Yellow Tape Media production, edited by Jason Usry and produced and hosted by me, Rebecca Sebastian. Please be sure to subscribe to Dialogue, a true crime conversation, wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on social media. We are at Dialogue Pod across all platforms. You can also drop me a note or a guest suggestion or sign up for my newsletter at RebeccaSebastian.com. Be sure to join me every Wednesday for a new episode and another killer conversation.